God said, listen. Just one night, my dear friends, in the stillness of the night, have you ever felt the whisper of something greater? Have you ever wondered if, beyond the noise of the world, beyond the weight of our worries, there was a voice calling to you, beckoning you to pause, to listen, to truly hear? Tonight I tell you this, God is speaking, and He asks for just one night of your attention. One night where you set aside your doubts, your fears, and your distractions. One night where you allow yourself to listen, not with your ears but with your heart. We live in an age of endless noise. The world shouts its demands, our own minds race with anxious thoughts, and in all of this clamor, we forget that the most important voice is often the quietest. God does not force His way in. He does not compete for our attention with the roar of the world. No, He waits. Patiently, gently, offering wisdom to those who seek it. But to hear Him, we must first be willing to listen. Perhaps you have prayed and felt no answer. Perhaps you have sought and found only silence. But what if the silence itself was the answer? What if, in the waiting, in the stillness, God is speaking to you in a way deeper than words? Too often, we expect God to answer in the way we demand, in the form we desire, and when He does not, we assume He is absent. But my friends, He is never absent. He's simply speaking in a way we have not yet learned to understand. Tonight I challenge you, give God one night. One night where you turn away from the distractions. One night where you choose faith over fear, surrender over control. Let the questions remain unanswered. Let the future remain uncertain, and simply be still. Because when you truly listen, you will find that God was never far. He has been there all along, waiting for you to hear. If you will listen just for one night, you may find that this night changes everything. If you will listen just for one night, you may find that this night changes everything. Because listening, truly listening, is not a passive act. It is a door that once opened reveals a reality far greater than the one we have built with our own hands. We often fear silence, because in silence we must confront ourselves. The distractions fade, the voices of the world grow dim, and we are left alone with the truth of who we are. And yet, it is in that sacred quiet that God meets us, not with condemnation, not with shame, but with love so vast and so steady that it shakes us to our core. Consider this. What if, in this one night of listening, you hear not just the echo of your fears, but the voice of God telling you that you are loved, that you are not alone, that your struggles, your burdens, your hidden wounds, they are seen, they are known, and they are held by hands far stronger than your own. Too often, we believe the lie that we must fix ourselves before we can come to God, that we must have all the answers, that our faith must be unwavering, that we must be worthy before we can stand in His presence. But my dear friends, God does not ask for perfection. He does not ask for grand gestures or flawless devotion. He asks for one thing, that we turn to Him, that we listen, that we surrender just long enough to hear the truth we have been running from. He has already been waiting for us. And so I urge you, Give Him this one night. No distractions, no demands, no conditions. Just a simple, willing heart, ready to hear. You may find that in listening, you are not only hearing God, but rediscovering yourself. You may find that in surrender, you are not losing control, but stepping into a life richer, fuller, and more deeply connected than you ever imagined. The world will still be there in the morning, the worries, the responsibilities, the noise, it will all return. But if you choose to listen tonight, even for just a moment, you will wake up knowing that you are not alone in it. You will wake up knowing that the God who spoke the stars into being, who calls each by name, has also spoken to you. You will wake up knowing that you are not alone in it. You will wake up knowing that you are not alone in it. You will wake up knowing that you are not alone in it. You will wake up knowing that you are not alone in it. And that, my friends, is something worth listening for. And when the morning comes, you will not be the same. Because a single moment of listening, truly listening, can change the entire course of a life. We spend our days filling the silence, drowning out the still, small voice that has been calling to us since the beginning. We fear that if we stop, if we allow the quiet to settle around us, we might hear something we are not ready to face. But the truth is, we do not listen because we are afraid of what God will say. We do not listen because we are afraid He will say exactly what we long to hear. What if, in that moment of listening, you hear Him whisper your name, not as the world has spoken it, laced with expectations, failures, and regrets, but as He speaks it, with love, with knowing, with the assurance that you are His. What if, in the stillness of this night, you hear Him say, "Come home." There is no life so broken, no heart so weary, no soul so lost, that it cannot be found in Him. And yet, He will not force Himself upon you. Love never forces. It only invites. It waits at the door and knocks, longing to be welcomed in. Perhaps you have spent years, even decades, running from the voice that calls you to something greater, something deeper, something truer than the life you have built. And yet, despite all the running, despite all the distance, He is still here. One night, that is all He asks. Just one night of listening. One night of surrender. One night of letting go of the noise, the doubts, the fears. One night to hear the truth that has always been waiting for you. And so I ask you, will you listen? Will you risk the quiet? Will you allow yourself to hear the voice that speaks not in condemnation, but in love? Because if you do, if you truly listen, you may find that this night is not an ending, but the beginning. A beginning of a life no longer built on striving, but on grace. No longer driven by fear, but by love. No longer bound by the weight of the world, but freed by the voice of the one who calls you His own. And when everything changes, it is not in the way the world expects. The mountains do not crumble, nor do the stars fall from the sky. The earth does not shake, nor does the sea rise to meet the land. No, when God speaks, the change is quieter, deeper, more profound. It is the shift of a heart that was once lost and is now found. It is the moment when the restless soul, weary from wandering, finally finds its home. You may think, but how can I know? How can I trust that this voice is real? The world has filled your ears with so many voices. Voices of doubt, of cynicism, of reason that leaves no room for mystery. But the voice of God is not like the others. It does not shout to be heard. It does not demand or coerce. It calls gently, persistently, like the tide that returns again and again to the shore. It is not found in the storm, nor in the fire, nor in the earthquake, but in the still, small whisper that speaks directly to your soul. Some will say that a single night cannot undo a lifetime of running, that no matter how earnestly you listen, the weight of your past will still remain. But I tell you, when God speaks, time itself bends to His will. The years of wandering, the burdens carried, the regrets clung to so tightly, they can all be swept away in a moment, not because they did not happen, not because they do not matter, but because in the presence of the one who redeems, they no longer define you. The past may tell you who you were, the world may tell you who you should be, but only God can tell you who you truly are. And He has been waiting for this night, waiting for you to hear Him say, "You are mine." Not in anger, not in accusation, but in the voice of a father welcoming his child home. So listen, not tomorrow, not someday when life is less complicated, when you have more time, when you feel more worthy. Listen tonight, because tonight is all we are ever truly given. This moment, this breath, this invitation. And if you do, if you allow yourself to hear, to truly listen, you may find that this night, this one night of surrender, is the beginning of everything you were always meant to be. And what if, in listening, you discover that the voice speaking to you has been there all along? That through every darkened corridor, through every closed door, through every whispered doubt, it has never left your side. What if the silence you feared was never emptiness, but waiting, waiting for you to quiet the noise of the world, the noise of your own troubled heart, long enough to hear what has been spoken since the beginning of time? You see, the world thrives on distraction. It fills our minds with urgency, our days with tasks, our nights with restless longing. It tells us we must always be moving, always achieving, always reaching for something just beyond our grasp. But God is not found in the endless striving. He is not discovered in the clamor of ambition or the applause of the crowd. No, He is waiting in the stillness. He is found in the quiet, in the surrender, in the moment when you finally stop running and simply say, "Here I am." And what happens when you listen? You hear the truth. The kind of truth that shakes the foundations of everything you thought you knew. Not the truth the world offers, cold, calculated, useful only insofar as it serves an agenda. No, this is the truth that sets you free. The truth that whispers, "You are loved beyond measure." The truth that says you were never alone. The truth that calls you by name and says, come home. For too long we have convinced ourselves that God is distant, that He watches from afar, uninvolved, uninterested. But to listen, to truly listen, is to know otherwise. It is to realize that He is closer than your next breath, more real than the ground beneath your feet. It is to understand that He does not need grand gestures or perfect words. He does not ask for flawless faith or unwavering certainty. He only asks for your attention, for your willingness to hear, for one night, just one night of truly listening. And if you do, if you quiet your heart and listen, you may find that what He speaks is not condemnation, but grace. Not demands, but love. Not distance, but presence. And that, my friend, what will you do with this one night? Will you let it pass like all the others, lost in the noise, buried beneath distractions, drowned out by the clamor of a restless world? Or will you dare to pause, to be still, to listen, not just with your ears, but with your soul? Because if you listen, truly listen, you will find that the voice of God is not one of accusation, but of invitation. It does not call you to a burden, but to a freedom you have never known. It does not demand perfection, but offers grace. It does not remind you of your failures, but whispers of a love so vast, so unshakable, that nothing in this world could ever take it away. For one night, let the questions rest. Let the doubts be silent. Let the fears fade into the background. And in that stillness, let Him speak. Not in the thunder, not in the earthquake, not in the fire, but in the quiet whisper, in the sacred hush where truth is born. In the words, but is the same in the words where truth is born. Because when you listen, you will know you were never alone. You were never abandoned. You were never forgotten. You were always His.